Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now we have this time around returning a character that was very popular when she came out the first time around in Arciela, but this time around she's getting her LD weapon and the community seems to be not quite so favourable towards her. So take a look with me as to what her LD actually brings to her kit as well as the event that's going to come along with her, and we can have a look together as to why that might be. So if that's all stuff that interests you, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Before we get started, obviously don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below, but the first thing I actually want to talk to you guys about is actually a little bit more of a serious matter. And it's not anything scary or anything, but I wanted you all to know that yesterday I had a very not so great day and I ended up going into Opera Omnia stupidly, thinking that pulling on a gacha would make me feel better. Now, I ended up pitying Onion Knight's LD, and I'm not very impressed about it because I realised that I was doing it for the wrong reason. So why I brought this up is I kind of wanted to reassure you all that, you know, if you want someone to message or anything like that because, you know, you're struggling with anything gacha related, or whether you're maybe like a bit worried about that kind of thing, then my Discord is open to all. So please do check that out because honestly, never ever pull on a gacha game to try to make yourself feel better from something like external that's made you feel bad. It's a gambler's fallacy, and trust me, it never ever works. So do as I say and not as I do, and if you have a plan, try to stick to it. But I figured I'd say something because I'm sure when the next video comes up, people will see that my gems have dropped down quite a lot and people are like, oh, what happened there? So I thought I'd let you guys know. On Patreon, I always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video, and today that person is going to be Dax, who is brand new to my Patreon, so thank you very much for being a part of it, and thank you to all of my patrons as always. If you're interested in getting a title card made just like this one, or being a part of my voice chats, which I'll be doing this Friday, in fact after my Final Fantasy 3 count-up stream, or other benefits as well, like being part of Would You Pull, then perhaps consider becoming a patron yourself. Don't forget to check out all of the other content creators out there for Opera Omnia and all of the external resources that I've got all in the description box below. So let's take a look at the banner and Arciela and her LD and everything that we can come to expect from the banner itself. Now the banner itself isn't great. It's got Arciela and obviously her entire kit on it. Another chance to get Onion Knight's Burst if you haven't already. I do have it, but we've covered that already. Let's move on. And we also have Renoa and Prish's EX, neither of which are particularly great at this point in time. Now looking at Arciela, if you've not used Arciela before, Arciela is a support red mage type character from FF11 who has two alternating stances that she uses in order to either debuff the enemy or buff your party. So the main thing with Ascension is that it's a mass dispel, which will come into effect for her Lufenia mission. It also grants the fast cast buff, which is basically allows your character's initial bravery to go straight back to their initial bravery like only one turn after you've used an HP attack, as opposed to 5 turns, so you can like use your HP attacks more sparingly. But at this point in time, there are so many characters that kind of refund bravery when they do HP attacks that this isn't nearly as needed as it used to be. It does also have an HP heal on there, as does her EX, and then it also like cancels out the buff that you would have gotten from the other attack as well. It also has a buff on it that raises her bravery, has bravery gen, and some other stat increases on top of it. Now Dissension is a more offensive style thing that has a splash damage on it instead of split damage, and it also inflicts max brave and speed down and also inflicts HP disable. So this is really strong in a lot of ways, in a similar vein to how Kefka works, because obviously having access to HP disable on the bosses that it works on is really useful. But as we progress through the Lufenia sort of era, there are more and more enemies that resist HP silence, so they're not quite as useful as you would have originally thought. You also get a party attack increase that's bigger than you would have gotten from Ascension, and it also lowers everybody's speed on the other side as well, on top of the fact that you've inflicted a frame debuff that does the same thing. Her C65 is actually quite relevant because it regenerates both of her skills by 1. So if you've got Onion Knight, and this is a great example of someone who benefits very well from Onion Knight's LD, if you can use this, then you're recovering a skill use for both of your skills, so you're getting 2 for the price of 1. So as we go into her EX as well, now Naqual's Vengeance is a fast casting EX because you're not meant to spam Arciela's skills. Like, she gets HP variants on her, on both of her stances, one of which is more battery related, one of which is more damage oriented. And you also, but with this one, you'll also get a framed buff which increases her stats further and gives more party bravery gen as well. And then it also heals as well, and you're also gonna get a first turn, like no, like instant skill, no consuming of the no consuming the skill use, so you'll get an extra free skill. You'll get a lot of them in general, but that's kind of all it does. It's kind of just like the most offensive attack that she really has, because it does AoE damage that's half decent, it heals, and it's something that's not using her skills up. So realistically, before now, like when she came out the first time around, people valued her for the fast cast buff and the HP silence. But then she didn't really like evolve much since then, because her kit is very loaded, and like in the boss fights where she works magnificently, because you can delay like stop your enemies from using HP attacks. You can be more kind of frivolous with your own HP attacks, so you regenerate your bravery quicker. And her LD kind of just does more of the same. Her LD is a 100% AoE damage attack, which is good for her, really strong for her. It does help quite a lot. And it regenerates a use of Dissension, which is the skill that grants the HP silence. She gets 4 uses of this. So it means you're going to get a lot of HP silence from Arciela if you decide to use her. It gives your enemies a framed debuff as well, which one half of it is amazing. The other half, not so much. Capacity Break prohibits brave gains, which is a big deal against certain bosses. But because you've got HP silence already, if you're trying to kind of use Arciela as a way of getting around that kind of thing, you're not going to take her to a boss fight where they're immune to HP silence, which kind of renders the brave gain redundant. But there are certain situations that this is useful. The HP damage increase by 20% inflicted by Arciela, it's not that great. Like, if it was party-wide, we'd be talking a very different story. But Arciela's not a damage dealer. That's not really what she's there to do. She's there to kind of provide the buff, the fast cast buff, to have the dispel on command, have the HP silence, which she now gets a lot of. So she's certainly not a bad character. She just hasn't grown a lot since her initial release. Like, if you want a character that's going to take you through a large majority of the game up until this point, then Arciela's fantastic. Like, she does a lot of work for you. But going forward, she will become less and less relevant as time goes on, because the LD just doesn't give her all that much to work with. Like, Capacity Break, the prohibiting the brave gains, that's a thing. That's a really nice thing. But it only lasts for 4 turns, so you have to time it well, like along with maybe like threshold or like massive brave gains, things like that. You could try and time it well with that, but it's not something that you're going to have consistently. What you're really wanting from this is the fact that you're getting more skill uses, so you can spam her skill uses a little bit more frequently, because you get 4 uses of this, and this in combination with her C65, you're getting a lot of her skill 2. But you don't get any more of her skill 1, so you're still going to have to be very sparing with that. As is the case with a lot of like new characters that are coming out with their LD and their LD board intact, all the LD board really does is make it deal more damage, which is good. Like, it's nice, but it's nothing like, oh my god, it's not Squall or Sephiroth or Warrior of Light or anything like that worthy. And then when it comes to her high armor, it's the support keystone, increases party attack by 5%. It's kind of nice. You might get something out of the fact that she can deal 5% more damage, but honestly, I don't think that I would pick this up. Purely because, again, Arciela is not a damage dealing character. She is there for the support, and 5% party attack isn't enough for me personally to warrant like using the high armor tokens on her. And then with artifacts, attack 108 because attack is just useful anyway, and I would have said initial bravery because a lot of her stuff scales off of initial bravery, but her C50 Sword Maiden increases her initial bravery and her max bravery, so you may as well just go with that. So now let's have a look at the event that's going to come along with Arciela's Lost Chapter, so the Lufenia. This time, I mean, if you guys remember when Arciela first came out, the Erode Mantises were actually really nasty because of a debuff they inflicted with their signature Gluttony Sickle attack. It was a frame debuff called Fluke that leveled up as you took damage, and it would drain your stats and give them to the Erode Mantises, and it would inflict HP poison, and you really just wanted to not deal with that as much as you could. And you'll be pleased to hear that this time around, the mission's actually a lot easier. They don't have a huge amount of health, certainly not compared with some other Lufenias like the one that we've just had, and depending on which characters you bring along with you, it's actually really quite simple. So the orb is starts at 80% HP, or after you take them under 80% HP, and just like Beatrix's Lost Chapter, and then Balthia's event, it's Dispel a buff. And it's actually better for you to dispel buffs one at a time, just like with Beatrix's Lost Chapter, than it is to dispel them all at once, which is what Arciela kind of does. The idea is that you would take Arciela to stop your enemies from using HP silent or HP attacks when you get a pop-up that says they're starving and they get an aura around them that they're then going to use Gluttony Sickle. If they then use another aura as well, then it means they're going to do a Vicious Brave HP attack. I forget the name of it, but they use another one as well. And you're basically supposed to time your HP silences with the auras because the aura doesn't last past the time in which they would have been silenced. They're also immune to Paralyze. So if you're taking Cloud along as your Dispel unit, don't rely on Cloud to stop those attacks from happening. But if you have Beatrix, you can do pretty well with her, like making sure that like her Holy Knight's protection goes off. If you have access to Balthia, then you get the added benefit of stealing the buffs from them and getting rid of the Fluke debuff while you're at it, so it works well. If you really wanted to, you could take Vanille's E-Sphere on literally anyone that could take it, Vincent, and use that to kind of counteract things, because the other thing that they do is they gain a very large amount of bravery at certain HP thresholds, which you are required to break as quickly as possible. Now you can make this really easy for yourself and take Ramza, who does the job by himself and just goes instant break, shout. But honestly, there are so many good damage dealers now that 60,000 bravery really isn't that big a deal at this point. Like I said, if you're bringing along Balthia or Cloud or Dark Knight Cecil, Lightning, you can get rid of that bravery with no issues whatsoever. So as long as you're careful to be able to weather the HP attacks that the enemies use, as well as that framed debuff, like you obviously need to be able to dispel a buff anyway because of the Lufenia orb, but if you can get rid of the debuff as well, it's actually kind of an easy ride this time. So now for the big question, of course, should you be pulling for Arciela? I personally believe that, and I don't know if this is the Onion Knight craziness talking, but this is one of the easiest banners to skip if you're recovering resources and you're waiting for Cecil to come along. However, Arciela is not a bad character, like far from it in fact. She's actually got a lot of merits to her. So if you do have the resources still available, I don't blame you for going for her. She is actually still very good. She's got the fact that her LD debuff only increases HP damage dealt to them by her is a little bit of an issue, but the Brave Gain prevention is really good. HP silence is prevented by a lot of enemies going forward, but not everything. So having a character like her in your back pocket is a great addition to have. And she still has fast cast, which is actually a lot stronger than people make it out to be, because characters like Vincent, now I know I've brought him up a couple of times, but I know there are people that still really want to use him a lot. Because he doesn't have bravery fund on a lot of his attacks like a lot of characters do, it does help him be a little bit more like cavalier with his attacks, so because he knows he's going to get his bravery back much quicker. So it does help out characters like him quite a lot. However, she does return on a very highly anticipated banner, which is Tidus's LD and Burst. So if you're quite happy to kind of wait, which is what I plan on doing, and go for that banner in particular, then you might pick up Arciela's LD on the way there, and you might have more use for it then. But if you've got other characters like Kefka, Eldnash, or even characters that just get rid of the turn entirely, like a Miditelian, there's no point in time really where you absolutely need to have Arciela. Like I said with her event, there's loads of other alternative characters you can use than Arciela, and there's plenty of different picks you could take for that. And if she's not like really useful in her own event, then what other ones is she going to be really useful for? And lastly, if you're trying to get resources ready for Cecil, this is the time to be doing it, because Cecil is he's 2 banners away, which isn't long. So if you're planning on pulling for him, you might want to start saving. And then finally, it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to voice your opinions on any given banner, whether you would pull on it or not, and why. So it's not all skips and people bypassing Arciela when it comes to this this particular banner, which is the general opinion that you would see if you went and asked the community that it was just a hard skip, because 40% of people have said that they're not going to pull on this banner, which is a fair bit more than most banners we've had recently. 34% have said that they're going to spend less than 100 tickets, 20% have said that they're going to spend more than 100 tickets, and 6% have said that they're going to use gems on this banner. So she's not as popular as a lot of characters. Like, people are happier to miss out on her than they are with certain others, but there are people out there that do want her. So Doman Dragoon here says, while her best days are behind her, Arciela brings so much with her abilities that I can't help but try with a few tickets. You can never have enough support characters. If I don't get the LD, I've still got my resources worth out of her from the work she did in the EX Plus era. Yeah, I mean, she's not the same character that she was back then. Like, when she came out the first time around, she was like the be all and end all, and she was incredible. And she's still good, she's just not as needed as she was back then, because so many other characters do so much more with their kits now than they used to. Anthony here says, gonna throw maybe 50 tickets or so. I have boards and weapons maxed out from last year, so it feels like a waste to not at least take a shot at the LD. If that wasn't the case though, it would probably be a complete skip for me. I think a lot of people will feel this way. Like, I would have probably thrown a few tickets at this had I not had my little issue with Onion Knight or anything like that. But at this point, I think because I'm trying to kind of get back on the stockpiling and stuff, that it's probably best just to leave her out of it. Atoy Project, however, says gems for Arciela. As a FF11 lifer, prison pun intended, I will not take the chance of missing out on her LD. She has a very flexible kit that has stayed relevant for me well into the Lufenia era, as I'm able to slot her in every about every fifth event or so. Aura base supports fit my playstyle very well, as she can play well with both turn stealers and buff heavy supports without interrupting their game. She's also one of the most flexible white crystal characters, so handy for Abyss and mission dungeons. Of course, Paladin Cecil is coming out and will be an even more effective white crystal character, but I have gems for him too. So, I mean, if you've got the resources for Cecil and you're not worried about any of the banners that come after him, like Gabranth, Kais, Emperor, I mean, I want the Emperor, but like anything further than that, then there's nothing wrong with grabbing Arciela, because she isn't bad, she's just not backbreakingly insane. And then finally, Multiracial Lion says, hard skip for me, much like Jack. Arciela's LD has a lot of potential, no brave gains is nice, but it's ultimately a disappointment in my opinion, as the HP damage up portion of the debuff only applies to her. This would be okay-ish on a DPS unit, but on a support whose damage isn't the selling point to begin with, nah. And this is very much how I feel about her as well. HP silence is nice, but Kefka and Elnash do it better, and there's literally never any need for Arciela, including for her own Lufenia. Reno, however, is an amazing pick for this. Didn't actually think of Reno, so yeah, that's a good one. I got her LD when it released on JP and literally never used her because she just wasn't cutting it. So I think that, like, if you want to make use of Arciela, then yeah, then you could pull for her. But this is very much a case of you're pulling her because you want her, not because you need her. Like, because there are so many other characters that can do her job now that she is less necessary than she used to be. I don't think that this banner is particularly worth putting on, but you guys might feel differently, as do some of the patrons that have cast their votes in their comments here. So a massive thank you to all of you for casting your comments, etc. And let me know down below what your thoughts on the matter are. So that's going to be all for today's video, and I do want to kind of just bookend what I said at the beginning of the stream and say that it is important not to let your emotions drive you when it comes to pulling on stuff, and I know this because I've made that mistake. I actually pulled Onion Knight's Burst on a ticket and then thought, well, I guess I'm pulling for the LD now, and then I thought, well, I'm just going to go gems, and I regretted it instantly. So just be careful not to let external forces or whatever kind of drive your opinions. Even if it's like somebody like me, if you know what you want to do, don't let somebody like me or another content creator tell you what to do. If you know you want something, go for it. If you know you don't want something, then don't get caught up in what other people are doing, and do what works best for you. I don't want other people to feel the same way that I did when I did that, because it brought back a horrible kind of phase I had with Brave Exvius when I used to play that, and I used to end up spending money on it, and then it is just a really ugly thing. So try to curb it, acknowledge the fact that you made a mistake, or that you weren't very happy with the outcome of what happened, and move on. It's really important, and it's something that I think that it would be a good idea to say to other people. So let me know in the comments below if that sort of thing resonates with you, and let me know what your experiences have been as well, because I think a problem shared is a problem halved, and then we can move on from that and move on to the next banner. We've only got 2 banners left until Cecil drops, so hopefully that'll be really exciting. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications for any future videos I might be making. And if you are pulling for Arciela, then good luck to you. Thank you very much, and I will see you guys soon. Take care.